The irony of this particular slide, starting off tonight, given that this was us about an hour and a half ago, is that this is a good way of summing up what an acidic day is like. And I will get into the science behind acid and alkaline. I'll talk about all kinds of different aspects. But in terms of the feeling of what being acidic feels like, I thought that was a really good place to start tonight, because all of us will know what that feeling's like. If you can imagine, if you're stuck in a traffic jam, this is kind of the feeling behind it. You're stuck in a traffic jam, you're running late, you've got your best clothes on, so you want to look up, you're going to a special work meeting, or you're going to a very important presentation that you've got to give. You've got your nice gear on, you've got your kids in the back seat because you promised your other half that you'd drop them at kindy this morning because you're running late and they're running late, and then you get stuck here. And of course, so suddenly the timer starts to go and you start to get a bit sweaty under the collar, and you feel that kind of heart start to beat, and you get a bit red, and you start to breathe, and you get a bit irritable, and you start to glamp on the steering wheel. And then one of the kids in the back says, I want to go to the toilet, and you can't get out, because that happened to me on the way in here, by the way. I got stuck thinking, 20 minutes, I'll hold on, I'll just go when I get here, and it was an hour and a half. So we're halfway here, and we're stuck there, and the kids needs to go to the toilet, and you can't do anything about it, you can't stop, and you can't get out. And so, of course, the kid just goes in their pants, right? So big mess in the pants, number twos, I'm talking about. The car starts to smell really bad, you start to get more tense, things start to, they start to get really quiet in the car. And then the other little sibling sitting behind you can smell the other one's number twos, so they all down the back of your chair, right? So down the back of your chair, and you've got your nice suit on. So your days start to get really acidic at this point, right? So you start to feel angry, the smell is awful, you're smelling all the vomit and the waste, and the kids start crying, and then you're running late, and the traffic's going nowhere, and you realize your promotion is going, and your new suit's ruined, and it's all a waste of time. It's terrible, right? Life is awful, and you're emotionally upset, and you're holding on the steering wheel, and everything's going terrible. And then you get a phone call, and you answer it, and it's your other half saying, I'm not happy in the relationship, I want to talk right now, So it's like, it's the worst kind of mix possible, right? Running late, everything gone wrong, really bad smell. You try to wind the window down, of course, and all you can smell is pollution. So that's kind of a really good example of an acidic day. You're tense, you're uptight, you're emotional, you can feel your body constricting, you're getting inflammation starting to happen. It's that whole, kind of the Western lifestyle really fuels being overly acidic. So it's a really good example as a one-off. And then we start to see what actually is a good example of an alkaline day. And of course, an alkaline day is like this. So this is the opposite. This is Tracy here, by the way, right here. See? And I can't even remember what it says on your backside at the time, but we used to make fun of that. But anyway, where was I? I wandered off for a second. So an alkaline day, as you do. So this is an alkaline day, and you know what we mean by an alkaline day, because it is really one of those days when you don't have any worries in the world. Like, worry doesn't exist. There's no concern. There's no fear, there's no upset, there's no worry, there's no emotional baggage. There's just, God, it's good to be alive. You feel like a kid, you feel flexible, you're breathing in the sea, you're walking along the sea air, you're breathing on those lovely negative ions, which we'll talk about later on. You go, woohoo, because things are so great. New Chums Beach, this is, by the way. Yep, New Chums Beach, some of you will know New Chums Beach. This is it, we discovered it, and we went down and we couldn't believe there was no one there. Right, and here it is, one of the most heavenly beaches, but the reality is you've got to walk over some rocks to get to it. Shock, horror. Oh my goodness, how can you do that? So yeah, that's why no one goes. Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful place. So anyway, walking along the beach, you've just had $1 million, you've won the lotto, it's gone into the bank, so all your mortgage is paid off, you've got all this money, you've been given 6 weeks off, paid vacation, and the boss has said when you come back to work, you don't have to work 1 day a week anyway because we value you so highly, so we're going to pay you the same amount. So that's kind of an alkaline environment. So that's going on. When you get back there, it's going to be great. And then you're on holiday and you're getting the sun, you get the vitamin D on you, you got the greenery, you got the negative ions, you got the ocean. You feel like stripping off, and you do strip off, jump in the water, have a swim, and you feel, oh, nice and clean. Huh? No, you swim nude, right? Because no one's there, right? See? So you swim nude and you feel I don't know if anyone swum nude here, but it's the most amazing feeling in the ocean. Fantastic. You chums, yeah. I used to swim years ago in Waiheke. We're going down the wrong path here at the moment, so let's move on. So anyway, that's an alkaline day. And you can see the real clear difference between the two. Being the opposite of everything that we want to have happen and everything going wrong and constricting. And the other one is freeing and flexible and happiness and joy and relaxation and exercise and fresh air. So it's really nice. And one way to sum up the acid alkaline is a little thing that I made up, and you need to pay me $1 every time you say this, of course. When acidic, you barely survive. When neutral, you are alive. But when alkaline, you thrive. And it really is a nice summary of what it is to be alkaline, slightly alkaline. The countless names of illnesses do not really matter. What does matter is that they all come from the same root cause, too much acid in the body. This is a great, great author. He's written a lot of really good books on this. So what actually is acid versus alkaline? How do we distinguish it? Well, acid versus alkaline is a measure of pH, which is potential hydrogen, and it's a measure of hydrogen ions in any kind of liquid, be it water, blood, or food. So any kind of basic mixture that gets broken down. 0, for example, is highly acidic. Carbon dioxide, as we know, too much carbon dioxide, you'll die. 7 is neutral. Babies are born at about pH of 7.4, and that's about the ideal pH that we want to stay at. When you stay at that level, it's very hard to get sick. And 14 is highly alkaline, which is what oxygen is. So you can get too alkaline and kill yourself, and you can get too acidic and kill yourself. So the idea, like everything in life, is a balance. However, slightly alkaline is where we really want to be. Foods with things like calcium and magnesium and sodium and potassium, we'll go into this in a bit more detail, in the bones make you more alkaline, and foods with chlorine or phosphorus, sulfur and nitrogen are more acid forming. So that's the slight distinction mineral wise. But nature everywhere is balanced. There's acid alkaline balance. The ocean, for instance, is 8.3%. One of the reasons we enjoy being near the ocean is because we get negatively charged with negative ions, which of course are alkaline forming in the human body. It's one of those reasons your brain gets clearer, you feel much better when you're in the ocean and you swim. Fish need the water to be balanced. In terms of science, you can actually measure it. For those who've had a fish bowl at home, if you've ever raised fish and you've got fish swimming around in a fish bowl, you'll notice that if the pH of the water gets slightly out, the fish will get sick and die. It doesn't actually take a lot for that water balance to change so much that actually life cannot be sustained. And plants are the same. Plants thrive under a good balance of pH, which you'll know all good gardeners will have a mixture of soil and mineral content and things in the soil to grow good, healthy plants. And even our environment has a delicate acid-alkaline balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So there's that balance between those two as well. So everything that we live in, be it the water we drink, the water we swim in, the food that we eat, or the very air that we breathe, is all a delicate balance of acid and alkaline. So it's actually everywhere. And it's about how do we control that, manipulate it, such that we get in touch with our health. So what is the liquid that we live in? Fish live in water. What's the liquid that we live in? We live in this thing called blood. Yeah. And this is where the pH balance and acid-alkaline really, really starts to kick in. Because if you can start to look after your blood, make sure that it stays balanced, then your health starts to come back. The acid-alkaline balance is crucial. Healthy babies are born about 90% water, about 7% fat, a couple of percent minerals, and with a pH of about 7.4, which is about ideal. And as we age, we generally get more and more acidic. And you'll notice from babies, when you can bend a baby's arm, you take a baby's arm or limbs, and they will stretch themselves out without any problem at all. But as we get older, we get more and more and more and more constricted. And of course, we are often suffering, particularly in the West, more and more constricting illness, where it's very rare you see someone who's elderly that can do stretches or yoga. So again, as we get to our 30s, it's one of the reasons I recommend doing yoga or some kind of stretching every day, which is why a lot of you will notice I'll be saying to you in homework and that do more stretching, get some stretching in, because stretching is something that we're sorely lacking. So we generally tend to get more acidic as we get older. And why does that happen in the West? Because 90% of our diet, of course, is acidic. The white breads, the white foods, the takeaways, processed meats, fried foods, cigarettes, drugs, alcohol, all highly acidic. All the mix of the common Western foods, all highly acidic. And they all have a downside. So our basic food pH has changed. And that's one of the things that's gone really out of whack. We evolved as human beings to 10 parts potassium to 1 part sodium. That's actually what the natural diet was that we evolved on. However, now, the ratio is actually 1 part potassium to 3 parts sodium. So we're not even completely reversed. We've gone completely reversed and a whole lot the other way. We're so out of whack. Instead of 10 to 1, it's 1 to 3. And you start to see why, because salt is very constricting, whereas potassium is very freeing. So you start to see, we've got a lot more of the constriction happening, which then builds inflammation in the human body, which is part of what we've got the problems with. So we also eat far lower amounts of vegetables, which is where we give our alkaline bicarbonate. And we eat far more acidic chloride, mostly in the form of table salt. Now there's plenty of salt in fruits and vegetables and nut seeds and whole grains and things. We can get plenty of salt. We actually don't have to add salt. And salt is not a demon as such. Salt's not terrible and it's not good. Salt is just a natural mixture of the natural mineral in foods. However, what happens is when you add it to all the processed foods in large amounts, then we get too much. So again, it's about that moderation. Because too much chloride constricts your blood vessels, narrows your blood vessels, and reduces circulation and things, increasing the stress on the heart. So our pH level has changed. And being too acidic is one of those things that a lot of people understand when you describe it. You kind of have this innate understanding of what it's like. You get achy, stiff, you get kind of grouchy, defensive and tired and snappish and sore and painful, inflamed, that kind of thing. Eating the wrong foods will make you get acidic. Overeating makes you get acidic. Stress as well. Reactions to chemicals or toxins. It's a classic case of if you're exposed to radiation or exposed to a toxic chemical like mercury in your mouth or something like that, you get overly acidic. And a hangover is a classic acidic reaction that is a very, very simply distinguishable acidic reaction in the human body, where the body is literally poisoned and it's trying to get the poison out of the human body. Drinking battery acid is also highly acidic, so I don't recommend that, but it's pretty much the most acidic thing you can do, is actually literally to drink battery acid. After that, you've got drugs and alcohol, but we'll get to that a bit later on. Also, emotions can have hugely detrimental acidic effects on the body too. Anger and bitterness and resentment, high stress, things like that, all highly acidic, and they literally eat away at you. And it's where the sayings come from, like, you're so stressed you can have a heart attack. And literally there is truth to that, where you can literally stress yourself into a heart attack. So starting to learn how to relax and manage your stress is a really good thing to do if you want to remain balanced. Symptoms of being over-acidic. One of the symptoms is getting colds and flus and coughs a lot. And again, it's something that I used to get a lot of when I was taking a lot of medications and drugs, and when I was still eating a lot of bad foods, not getting enough sleep and balance in my life. I used to get sick a lot, and I know what it's like to be over-acidic. And of course, the body will coat over-acidic areas with mucus to try to flush them from the body. So we get over levels of mucus, then you get bugs and colds and things. So arthritis and rheumatoid disturbances as well. Osteoporosis is a very acidic condition. We'll talk about a bit later on. Addictions to coffee and cigarettes as well. Short temper, irritability, grouchy, bitter, sensitive, itchy skin. Skin complaints in generally to do with the liver, is a huge part of the problem with skin problems. And you can, of course, help your liver out by eating less, regular fasting, more water and more greens. And they're the key things to do with the liver, of course, transform it. Muscle aches and pains, which often come from inflammation. And of course, inflammation generally comes from being too overly acidic. Migraines as well, headaches, poor sleep, and basically feeling mad at the world is a good way of summing it up. So you get those people that are really carrying a lot of baggage and emotional kind of roar at everyone. You can tell they're very, very acidic. And it's why you've got that classic case where you'll get someone who's really uptight and they'll get a massage and they'll literally start to melt onto the table. You start to free up the acidity and massage it right out of them. Or give someone a cuddle who's really emotionally acidic and they burst into tears. All the acidity starts to come out. So it kind of crosses over a lot with emotions as well. People have very specific reflections of emotional instability with acid and alkaline. The ideal blood is about 7.46, and this has been shown in studies around the world. And if your blood pH level moves below 7 or above about 7.5, you start to get into trouble, and that's when you start to lead to disease. Now, the amazing thing about the body is it tries to balance out the blood the whole time as well. So the body tries to continually strive to have this balance. It's got an amazing mechanism like getting rid of carbon dioxide, breathing it out, things like that will help you remove acidity. But we're trying to get that balance. But if you can remain at around 7.4, you'll find very, very hard to get sick. And fasting is one of those things that will bring you right back to an acid-alkaline balance very, very quickly. It's one of the reasons why you stop eating, you suddenly start to feel good once you're used to what fasting is and you go through that process. Movement is life, and this is another great way of summing up the passing of ions. And when you go to the beach and you breathe in those negative ions from the ocean, you start to feel more alkaline. And it's the passing of ions. The other way of saying it is passing of ions, or passing ions, or pass ions, or pass ion, or passion. And it's where the word comes from, the passing of ions, the movement between human beings, passion, romance, love, movement, all tied in even with the language. We know the passing of ions gives us passion. And one of those ways of describing people when they're fully alive is they're so passionate about something. And of course that's when they're very alkaline as well. So you can start to see even the language crosses over between all the different barriers. So the major alkaline minerals, the things to really watch out for: calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, silica, manganese, and iron. These are the main alkalining minerals that we need to have in good amounts. And of course these are found in fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and sprouts. So very high levels in your natural fruits and vegetables. They're stored in the leaves and the stems of plants, and the interesting thing is when you see them, they're also stored in the same kind of areas of human beings. So we eat the parts of the plants that are similar to the parts of human beings, which are those leaves, stems, and things, and then they actually get stored in the same areas in the human body. So we're very reflective alkaline we store in the bones, just like we eat them from the bones of plants. The major acidic minerals, things like phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, iodine, nitrogen, found in high amounts in meat, dairy products, grains, and legumes, much, much higher amounts. And they're stored in the seeds and the roots of the plants, and they're stored in the muscles, which is why when you're wanting to get bigger, which is generally more acidic, once you get to full, we call full adult size, around 20, once you start to get bigger, then it's more of an acidic condition, and if you get smaller, it's more of an alkaline condition. So when you're wanting to put on muscle, it's one of those things where you get the bodybuilding giants, the Arnold Schwarzeneggers and that, they put on all this muscle, they get more and more acidic, and of course what goes along with that is less flexibility and movement, so they actually can hardly move, but they're very, very big and muscular. So it goes along very much because their muscles are getting bigger. The more muscle, the more acidic, the less flexibility. So again, the more constriction in the body. So it all ties in with food, with muscular activity and things as well. So again, it's why flexibility in yoga and stretching is so important. So food has an impact on pH, and we're all made up of organs, and of course the organs are made up of tissues and cells. The tissues and cells are comprised of about 16 different chemical elements. And all the functions in the body, whether it's respiration or digestion or metabolism, all work at slightly different pH levels. And after digestion, all foods leave either an acid or a neutral or an alkaline ash in the human body. And that is what the distinction is of whether that food is alkaline forming or acidic forming, because all foods leave behind like a footprint in the human body, those few things that are left over, and that will tell you whether it's acid or alkaline. The normal breakdown, of course, is 80-20, and it's why it's one of those rules in life where if you live the rule of 80-20, you generally get by pretty well on most things, and acid-alkaline is exactly the same. Funnily enough, if you live 80-20 acid-alkaline, it's about perfect. So again, if you're thinking about a meal, for instance, if we have the most acidic food, which is pretty much pork, and then you have the alkaline foods like your green vegetables, if you have 4 parts of green vegetables to 1 part of pork, then you'll be doing all right as a balance. So it's that kind of balance you happen on your plate, so you don't have too much of one or too much of the other. Now the other thing to remember is most of us in the West are acidic at any one time. Most of us are a little too stressed, a little underslept, not enough sunlight, not enough exercise, not flexible enough, a bit overeaten. So most of us are in that environment, and the Western environment we live in is very acidic. So it leads towards that. So having more of an alkaline focus on the diet is a way to bring that balance back in, and you can really influence it. And this balance is mostly overlooked by a lot of doctors and practitioners. They've actually forgotten how powerful it actually is. Our diet plays an important role in maintaining appropriate pH levels in the body. Most diets can give rise to unhealthy acidic pH, and imbalanced pH can interrupt cellular activities and functions. Excessively acidic pH can lead to progression of several serious health problems such as cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, and heartburn. It's a really great quote, California. I really like that quote because it really sums up, look, your diet and your lifestyle has this huge impact long term on your health as to how you do it. So where does the original theory come from? How did it all start? Well, it was started actually in 1914, and the original research that was done on it was very, very accurate. And it hasn't actually altered a lot in the last nearly 100 years since it was actually distinguished. Then in 1933, Dr. William Howard Hay discovered that of his patients, when he tested their blood, he found the most sick patients he had the highest acidity levels in their blood, and the healthiest patients had the highest alkalinity level. So he noticed there was a real clear distinction between how sick my patients are and what their acid-alkaline was. So he then started looking back on the research from 20 years before, and he started to notice parallel collaboration between acid and alkaline and sickness or not. He published a book called The New Health Era, and funnily enough, this is where a company got its name from a number of years ago that did the New Era tissue salts that were in the health industry, where you can buy the little tissue salts. It actually comes from this book. And he stated that all disease is self-poisoning due to a build-up of acidity in the body. Acidic material is building a toxic build-up in the body. And that's why we talk about a hangover as being so acidic, because a hangover is literally a build-up of toxins in the human body that the body is trying to get rid of, and the liver goes completely out, which is why you get the hangover, you feel sick, and it's trying to flush it from the human body. So, Nobel Prize winner also had a connection with an acid-alkaline. Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize for showing that cancer grows rapidly where there's very little oxygen. And it's another reason why if you're having a lot of added sugar, for instance, cancer grows with sugar. That's what cancer grows on. 10 times more sugar a cancer cell requires than a normal cell. And of course, sugar also kills your liver. And of course, the liver will save your life if you get cancer. So if you're eating a lot of added sugar, it will grow cancer. And then the very organ that's going to save your life and remove the cancer is the liver, which is also getting poisoned by the sugar. So it's a real double whammy. It's why sugar and alcohol are the dangerous mixture when it comes to liver cancer or any kind of cancer in the human body. If you want a healthy liver, you need to avoid those two. So oxygen-rich blood is essential to health, and it's one of the reasons why moderate regular exercise keeps us healthy. Not too much exercise where you get into high strain, and not very low levels where you're barely moving at all. So you're wanting that kind of middle area where your heartbeat gets up and you're feeling good, and you can kind of talk and occasionally have a bit of a run or a jog or a bounce or a stretch or whatever, but you're wanting to be able to kind of converse for most of the time. Alkaline tissue has 20 times more oxygen. So if you're talking about prevention of cancer, you need to make sure your tissues are more alkaline. And of course, how do you do that? Through your blood. And it's the crucial link. Cancer patients typically have a pH level in the body organs of 4 to 5, and often in the blood as well. Coca-Cola pH, by the way, is 2.5 pH. So in terms of the very, very polar opposite of what we're looking for good health, whereas water is a pH of 7 and cola is a pH of 2.5. So you start to see, well, what's the best thing for the human body? You can start to see why water has a much better effect than any kind of cola drink. So how does it work? Well, after you digest any kind of food, the food reports to the kidneys and it leaves either an acid or an alkaline ash in the body. The kidneys are responsible for the fluid balance, as we know. That's very, very important with the kidneys. And that's part of where you get protein problems. If you eat too much protein-rich foods, you start to get problems in the kidneys. And maintaining a relatively neutral body pH. And this ash then gets travelled around in the blood from the kidneys and it gets deposited across the body. And that's how you end up with that ash, either alkaline or acidic ash, ending up in your organs. And once that's in your organs, it's hard to get rid of. So this is how the foods that you eat affect the acid-alkaline balance, by being digested, and then what's left over gets sprinkled on the organs. And when you eat high acidic foods, the kidneys immediately try to buffer these acids. And this is where it gets interesting in terms of bone disease, because how does the body buffer acids? With alkaline minerals. And of course, where does the body get the alkaline minerals from? Where are they stored? They're stored in the bones. And so this is a process the body goes through. So your blood is your delivery system, and the quality of the blood gives you your all pretty much pervading health profile. Is about the quality of your blood. And that's why having good, healthy blood is so important. And it's why people like Keith Richards, after years of abuse, goes in regularly and has an entire blood transfusion because, it can actually give him some good health again. So that's where that kind of theory comes from, is cleaning the blood. And once your blood is clean, it washes the body clean. The blood washes everything clean, it transports everything, and it removes all the waste. So the blood is what's moving everything around the body the whole time. And we've got litres and litres and litres and litres flushing through us right now, washing over our bodies. And from that wonderful, highly alkaline dinner we all just ate, giving ourselves good minerals and going through the human body. So the blood and the cellular liquids and all the body fluids are alkaline. However, the organs are more acidic. So that's where you've got a balance comes from. So it's not all about alkaline, because if you really got into too much alkaline, you would literally wander off, you'd lose your mind, because you'd lose being grounded to the planet in any way whatsoever. So you need that balance of acid and alkaline, where you've got some roots down as well as some leaves, for wanting to not sound too kind of ethereal. You first build good quality blood, and then you build muscle. So if you're wanting to build good quality muscle and have a healthy, lean body, build your blood first, then start to feed your muscle. Because to make sure that the blood remains pH balanced is important. And you can control it through your diet, because one of the things to remember is that your blood pH is pretty much regulated by the human body. It can go out little bits, and if it goes out over time and the body doesn't regulate it, that's when you get sick, once you get acidic blood. But the body will make sure almost all of the time that you do not get acidic blood. And how it does that is by sucking the minerals out. The body will wreak all kinds of havoc around the rest of the body to maintain healthy blood pH. Because if the blood pH goes, you're in real trouble. So in the bloodstream, there are buffers that act to chemically resist changes in pH. You've also got the lungs removing carbon dioxide, of course, as we breathe. And the kidneys secrete extra hydrogen, also to retain sodium in the blood as well. So your bones and your teeth and your blood, this is where I always find it starts to get really interesting with acid-alkaline. Because when the body is acidic, the bones release calcium and release magnesium to re-establish alkalinity. When your blood gets too acidic, the body needs to have that buffer of calcium and magnesium in the blood to keep it balanced. So when that happens, the body will hit the parathyroid hormone in the brain and call out and say, parathyroid hormone, help me out. The parathyroid hormone will go, oh, well, you know what? We need a whole lot of more calcium and magnesium because our blood's getting pH unbalanced. And then the brain will go, parathyroid hormone, go and find me some calcium. And if there's no calcium available, it will go straight to your bones. That's what its job is, to find calcium and pull it out of wherever it's stored and release it into the bloodstream to keep our blood balanced. And that's how you will wreak havoc with osteoporosis and all kinds of bone problems if your blood regularly is getting too acidic. So it's a direct fallout of your diet. The PTH, which is parathyroid hormone, kicks in, it takes over, and muscles are broken down also to create ammonia, which is highly alkaline once it's actually broken down. And your phosphate buffer system uses phosphate ions to neutralize strong acids. So seeing the body has this amazing system of trying to keep the pH balanced. About 85% of these phosphate ions came from calcium phosphate salts. And where do calcium phosphate salts come from? The bones and the teeth. So as soon as the body gets too far out, it will start to literally suck your bones dry, which is why when you're too acidic for too long, your bones will start falling apart. Very important key thing to remember. Bones can be recalcified and regrown. Fruits and vegetables, as an example, add alkalizing bicarbonate to the body. And this has a favourable effect. It helps you reabsorb nutrition as well and build strong bones. And of course, it takes us about 7 years to grow bones fully. So we get new bones about every 7 years. It takes for full reintegration of bone health. So if you want to grow healthy bones, if you eat really well for 7 years, after that period of time, your bones will be fully regrown again. The rest of the body is about 97% every 12 months. When the body is balanced, you get silica, sodium and magnesium are recycled through the body. You recalcify the bones. And then your bone minerals get broken down and your muscle leftovers get excreted in the urine. And that's another negative thing about eating a highly acidic diet. That leads to kidney problems because all the protein starts to come out and the calcium, you get high levels of calcium being urinated out in your urine as well. So you start to lose calcium as it circulates in the body. So long-term acidity leads to thinner bones and lower muscle mass. And of course the other really interesting thing about eating more fruits and vegetables is that 90% of our bone matrix is actually a protein matrix called collagen. That's 90% of what our bones are actually made of. So we've got all the minerals there on top of this collagen. And that collagen is stimulated by the natural vitamin C and antioxidants in fruits and vegetables. So that's the only thing that stimulates the growth of collagen. And it's another reason why in the West, our collagen deposits drop as we get older. And collagen, of course, gives you youthful skin, elastic skin, healthy bones, healthy hair, healthy nails, all these kind of things all come from high levels of collagen. Collagen is created and grown by vitamin C. And I'm not talking about vitamin C in a pill, I'm talking about vitamin C in a food. It's got to be whole natural vitamin C. But as we find in other areas of the world, they don't get the bone degradation that we do because of their basic diet is so highly alkaline and their lifestyle is more alkaline. They don't actually have the breakdown we do. So again, another side effect for eating more fruits and vegetables leads to much, much healthier bone mass. So phosphoric acid is a food stabilizer. Some of you may know what is the richest food source of phosphoric acid, which I'll get to in a minute. But it's highly acidic on the human body. It dissolves bones, literally. It's incredibly powerful. It leaches into your 60,000 or so miles of veins like hot water melting butter. It's a nice way of saying it because it really does get in that quickly and effectively. It interrupts cellular functions in the brain as well, from the heart to the brain. It weakens your immune system and runs it down in the gut. It removes nutrition from the human body, so it sucks minerals and vitamins out of the gut and lowers the ability of the muscles to contract. So it lowers your ability to actually exercise. What is the richest single source of phosphoric acid in the modern food supply? Cola, exactly. 800 milligrams of phosphoric acid per 1 litre. Now just to balance that 800 milligrams out, just to balance that, you need 800 milligrams of pure calcium that's absorbable by the human body. Now most people don't get that in a day, and yet we have a generation of children drinking a Coca-Cola, a litre a day of Coca-Cola, literally dissolving their bones. And it's one of the reasons the osteoporosis rates, the average age is dropping every year. The actual average age of it. Some diseases, the average age stays about the same. Osteoporosis is getting lower and lower and younger and younger and younger as more and more young people are highly acidic over long periods of time. And of course sedentary, and then drinking lots of fizzy drinks and cola drinks, and they get acidic bones. So cola is one of those things where I obviously don't recommend you have any cola ever in your house, ever. Never drink it, never, ever, ever. So food pH can be a little confusing. Some people do get confused by the food pH because what's alkaline outside the body is actually acidic inside the body. And what's acidic inside the body is alkaline outside the body. So it's a complete reversal. So for instance, things like lemons that we consider to be very acidic are actually highly alkalining. So generally it's the opposite effect. So it gets a little confusing. So when we digest the food, it's oxidized and burned and metabolized and digested. And it forms a number of things. Firstly, it forms some water. And then it forms some carbon dioxide, it forms some nutrients that are left over, and then it forms an inorganic compound. So they're the 4 kind of things that fall out. And of course, it's one of the reasons why, if you want to know what the best source of water is, people are always asking me, the best source of water is inside your green vegetables. That's the best source of water. Cucumbers, for instance, 96% water. So the best source of water you can get is inside your leafy green vegetables. They're all wrapped up with wonderful alkaline minerals. And the alkaline or acidic nature of this particular inorganic compound determines whether the food is acid or alkaline. So it's a very simple process. And acid-alkaline eating is the biological terrain. So we're talking about how the entire workings of the human body work, What is the basis of all the blood that's flowing across them? What is the pH balance of that blood and how it influences the health of the body? Acid-alkaline balance is not to be confused with the immediate acidity of a food outside the body. And again, what I've done is I've done some charts that will be coming up to show you, and you'll be getting those charts over the next 2 weeks or so. You'll actually get the full charts that I'm about to show you shortly that will give you a real clear indication of what foods are more alkaline and what foods are more acidic. And I recommend you print it out and stick it on your fridge because it gives you a really good sense of what's acid, what's alkaline. The pH index by Robert Young, he's one of those cutting-edge doctors around the world that's very effective in terms of distinguishing pH. He does a lot of blood work. He's one of the most researched doctors on blood work on the planet. And he can actually literally show you on screen how your blood's getting acidic or alkaline. Meat, for example, is very alkaline, but when eaten, becomes very acidic because, of course, it's very high in phosphorus and those acidic minerals. Whereas pork, for example, one of the most acidic foods you can eat at -38. Parmesan cheese is -34. Now remember, the human body is perfectly balanced at about 7.4. So you start to see how acidic these foods are. Lemons, for instance, outside the body is very acidic, but inside the body, after digestion, are very, very alkaline. It's one of those reasons why lemon juice is so good to drink first thing in the morning. Stimulates the digestive juices and very, very alkalining on the human body. Leafy green vegetables vary from about +6 to about +20, so a perfect way of leading us towards a more alkaline body balance as opposed to more acidic balance where we normally sit. Spinach, +14, so having your green smoothies with spinach and lemon and some water, wonderful way of highly alkalining the body. Almonds are about +3, apples +4. So those kind of foods vary, and they all kind of vary around that kind of nice area of particularly fruits and vegetables. The bloods and liquids in the body need to be slightly alkaline, so you need to have a slightly alkaline blood. The heart and the liver, the kidney, the pancreas, the adrenal glands all function best in a slightly alkaline state. And a hydrochloric acid raises acidity in the stomach, thus lowering the pH. So again, you raise the acidity inside, lowers the pH. As I said, it can get very confusing if you think too hard about it. Stomach pH is about 4 to 5, but it goes down to 2 to 3 when digesting. It's got to be more effective. Small intestines a little bit more because, of course, it's a different mixture of food in there. And the colon is 5 to 5.7. 5.5 to 7. So it's a slightly different mixture. But food digestion, amylase, for example, is produced in response to eating carbohydrates. So tonight we ate a predominantly more of a carbohydrate-rich meal. There was tofu in there as well. There was some lentils, so more higher protein foods. But predominantly what we ate was more carbohydrate-rich. So we'll actually have a lot more amylase in our stomachs right now digesting that food. Actually, while we're sitting right now, there'll be a lot more amylase going in because when you eat carbohydrates, amylase is pumped in to break it down. And amylase is active in an alkaline medium, of course, which is what most of those carbohydrate foods are, which is more alkaline, and destroyed in a mildly acidic environment. So you actually wipe out those food digestive enzymes. Pepsin is produced in response to eating protein. And of course, peptin is active in acid, and that's why you get animals, particularly carnivores like cats and dogs, have much higher levels of protein digestive enzymes in them than they do amylase digestive enzymes because they're eating more of a meat-based diet. Whereas as humans, we have about, 90? It's either 80 or 90% carbohydrate digesting enzymes naturally in us, do we do at about 10% protein. So we're actually designed to be eating a lot more carbohydrates. However, not the kind of refined carbohydrates that we eat these days, of course, as you all know. So not the white breads, but more the brown rices and the more prominently fruits and vegetables. So acidosis, too much acid in your body, is the main cause of all illness. Another great quote from Robert O. Young. And that's the book too. If you're wanting to read more about this, I'd recommend getting that. Miracle, Balance Your Diet, Reclaim Your Health, the pH Miracle. The Western lifestyle causes it. So it's pretty much a mixture of those salt-rich foods, the animal foods, cheese and meat, saturated fats, eating too much, high-protein diets, brilliant way to make yourself more acidic, medications, junk foods, stress, environmental toxins, all of which generally leads to constipation. And constipation is one of those highly acidic conditions which then build inflammation because everything literally gets packed up and then all the body starts to get inflamed because you start to get no way of getting it out, so the body starts to pack on. So constipation is one of those key things, which is why I'm often going on about constipation. And as Nairi gives me grief for talking about bowels, any way to segue into bowels is a great way to talk. So constipation means rotting into even more toxic acidic waste residues, which of course none of us need, because one way of actually seeing how effective your bowels are, I've actually talked quite a bit about fasting tonight, haven't I? I must be Anyway, so with fasting, one of those things, I've been regularly doing some water fasting recently on the Sundays, the last few weeks. And one of the things you notice about water fasting particularly, and I know some of you have got to being able to water fast now, some of you are still on vegetable fast, and it's different for everyone. Some people take a few years to get there, some people go quickly. So one of the things I notice though is when you water fast, the next day, as soon as you eat something, you eliminate. It's the amazing difference with the water fasting is you literally get clear. And you're so empty that, after about 2 or 3 days of water fasting, you eat anything at all, and you can almost feel it immediately stimulating, and the bowels will move. And it's an amazing process to go through because you literally are clean inside. It's quite neat. But anyway, how did I get onto that? So constipation. So let's move on from fasting. So digestion of food requires enzymes. And again, when you look at the mixture of what we're eating, cooked food contains no enzymes, no digestive enzyme activity. So if you're eating too much cooked foods, and that's why we talk about a mixture of some cooked food, some raw food, some fermented food, some sprouted food, and it's that nice mixture of the 4 food groups that we need, because if you're eating too much cooked food, because once food's cooked over a certain temperature for more than about 5 minutes, there's no digestive enzymes left. It's literally all killed. Now that doesn't mean the food's no good, because you still get a lot of goodness out of some cooked foods. However, what it does mean is the body has to create the enzymatic activity itself. And where the body pulls its digestive enzymes from is the pancreas and the immune system. And of course the pancreas creates insulin. Once you're weakening the very organ that creates insulin, then you risk for diabetes, right? And then once you run your immune system down and it gets sick, then you're at risk for coughs and colds and flus and bugs and all that, right? So you can't even fight a common cold. So again, it's the fallout of eating the wrong kind of foods. And digestion also has a huge impact on your pH level. There's no food or digestive enzymes in the colon, there's just bacteria. And of course we know that we want to have everything broken down by then, so it's just the really good stuff that hits your colon. And when the body's unable to process enough acidic waste, which is when it really gets stuck in there, it then steals minerals from the body again, sucking those good minerals out of the bones, attaches them, making them salts, which then form cellulite, kidney and gallstones, which is when you get literally the salts forming stones, and you get problems being stored in the human body, which again you get that constricted effect. And you'll hear doctors talk about it when they talk about, that constriction that happens in the veins, and you get the constriction in the organs, and you get that constipation, which is constrictive. So what you're trying to do is more releasing of the body as opposed to constrictive. And of course you can do that literally with your diet. Long-term over-acidity causes a number of things, and of course there's so many different things. I got it smaller and smaller and smaller up here, and you'll see it going right down to the bottom of the page, but it does cause an enormous mixture of things, generally starting with constipation, leading to things like inflammation and burning and those kind of painful conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and standard arthritis and osteoporosis and painful conditions, things like that. So there's a huge mixture of things, and also skin problems. If you're getting regular skin problems, definitely look to your liver and look to alkaline your diet, because as you alkaline your diet, your skin problems will clear up. It's almost guaranteed. So eat plants when they're naturally ripe. What are some of the key things you can do to make yourself more alkaline? One of them is to eat plants when they're naturally ripe. And of course this evokes the picture of standing out in a field under a tree with one arm up, waiting for that apple to fall in, and the moment pop, it lands in your hand. That is when the apple's at its peak. It never gets any better than that moment. And it's why we all have this inherent unhappiness with knowing that our fruit is stored. But in terms of eating plants when naturally ripe, when the plant is fully ripe, there's 5 key reasons why plants are better for you when they're naturally fully ripe. Number 1, the highest amount of natural digestive enzymes. Now, of course, the foods that are the richest in digestive enzymes are the foods that we generally eat the least of, which are sprouts. Sprouts are the superfood rich source of digestive enzymes. The other ones are fruits and vegetables, and fermented foods are rich as well. So the highest natural of digestive enzymes when the plant is fully ripe. The major alkaline minerals are all stored in the leaves and the stems, and that is generally the part that we eat. So we generally tend to eat that part of the fruit or the vegetables. The nutritional content also at its peak. Mother Nature has this amazing process where the nutritional content gets to about its peak and then it drops off the tree. So it says, my baby's perfect, off it goes, and gives it away, and we're away. So the nutritional content tends to be very high then. It's also much easier to digest. You'll notice that fruit that's picked early, you'll eat it and you'll get a stomach ache. Very hard to digest. You'll notice that if you eat green bananas, for instance, or if you eat lemons that aren't quite ripe yet, you'll get a stomach ache, and that's the body going, oh, forget about it. So it's much easier to digest, and you'll find things like bananas, they're perfect mixture when they just start to get soft inside, and of course the skin helps with that, it protects things, and it has the most antioxidant power. So not only does it have the most minerals, So the most nutrition, but also the most antioxidant power. And the skin starts to change colour too. And often the skin will change colour just before fruit is ready and ripe as well. You'll notice there's a change in colour that goes through when the antioxidants all come to the surface of the fruit, the polyphenols, and that's when you get the best absorption. So that's a wonderful thing to do as well. So these are the reasons why you want to eat plants when they're ripe, not when they're stored. And of course they're a lot more alkaline when they're ripe. So, keep going. One more slide. So there we go. One more slide. My good wife has told me. So water. Our bodies are about 70% water. We know that, and we know that the natural pH of water is about 7. So there's a perfect fit, right? Very, very nice. And there's no replacing water with other liquid. Some people asking me about water. What can I replace water with? No, you can't replace it with anything. Get used to drinking water. And I had a friend down in Coastlands in the North Island, just near Wellington. And she said one of the bits of advice she always tells her customers, she works in a health food store, she goes, get used to loving the taste of water. And it's a great piece of advice, Start getting used to loving the taste of water. And you can start off with one really, really simple trick, is to buy actually some really nice drinking glasses to drink it out of. Like if you actually got a really nice jug, and if you've got a really nice set of glasses, and you put a little bit of mint in, fresh mint, or you have some fresh herbs, you drop a little bit in, or a squeeze of lemon. It's a wonderful way of getting a lot of water into you. And it's funny how psychologically we work. That's why we go for packaged foods, because they kind of look appealing. You can actually make your own water really, really appealing just by doing that. So if you can't initially get used to enough water, then you can actually add little bits of green vegetables, like cucumber is delicious. Just a couple of slices of cucumber dropped in some water, keep it in the fridge for a little while. It's beautiful. It has this incredible fresh, minty kind of flavour to it, which is a great thing to do as well. So there's no replacing water with other liquids. And as you get used to it, you can flavour it slightly. Food cravings can be the body's cry for water. Like the body can be very, very thirsty, but instead has food cravings for chocolate and coffee and wheat, things like that, fast foods. And as you develop and eat more water-rich foods, you'll find that you'll develop a natural, healthy water thirst as well. You can actually train yourself to reinvigorate that as well with high water diets, with rich water foods. And high water content foods can be extremely alkaline, and vegetables and sprouts are the world champion water-rich foods. So again, the foods that have the highest nutritional content are sprouts, the highest digestive enzymes are sprouts, and the highest water content are sprouts, and the highest alkaline mineral content are sprouts. You can take something like linseed, which has got no vitamin C, dry, sprout it, and after 3 days, it's got about 900% mega massive increase in vitamin C. It's a huge increase in the minerals and vitamin contents. So, we'll leave this one up while we have our break. But this is a really good little chart here, common drink pH levels. And what we've got here is on the left at the top, I've given what I consider to be the worst possible thing to put in the human body as a liquid, which is cola drinks. And then the best possible thing to put on the bottom, which is water. And so you notice cola has a lot of energy, of course, which is all based predominantly around sugar. The amount of teaspoons is about 6.5 in a general serving, and the pH levels are very, very low. So very acidic. And then you look at things like cordials as well, high sugar, sports water, which is low sugar but high crap. And then you get lemonade, excuse my French, lemonade, which again high sugar, energy drinks, high sugar, and of course this contains high levels of caffeine and things as well. Fruit juice, which again is high sugar, natural sugar, but again still sugar. Cow's milk, which is about half the amount of sugar, which makes it a lot more alkaline than fruit juice. And then you've got water, which is that perfect kind of mixture. So pH level of 7, no calories, no sugar at all, and a perfect balance for the human body, as opposed to Coca-Cola, which contains high levels of sugar and is highly acidic. And you'll notice that a lot of foods that are high sugar, high salt, are also highly acidic. And it generally tends to be because they're packaged foods. We tend to try to make something last a long time on the shelf, which is the opposite to picking it fresh, of course. When you pick it fresh, it's alkaline. When you pick it unfresh, it's acidic. And then we add things to it to preserve it, remaining and keeping it acidic. So it's that double whammy as such. So the next slide is an interesting one as well in terms of high content rich foods. And I'll put both of these on a slide for you to get over the next couple of weeks. And we start off over in the red part there, which is the zero contents of water, which is oil, of course, which has zero content of water. And then we go up to things like nuts and seeds and cereals, end up down at margarine at about 20%. Then you get into things like jams and breakfasts and cheeses and things like that. Then you get into sweet potatoes, chicken and pasture, and you get the meat kind of areas, that kind of thing. Then you start getting into fruits. You'll notice here that a lot of more fruits. And then we start to get into the real superfoods here. And this is kind of the really amazing part of the slide when you really start to look at, isn't it interesting how the mineral-rich foods, the alkalining foods, the high fiber foods, and the vitamin-rich foods, the digestive enzyme-rich foods, the prebiotic-rich foods, are all also the high water content foods. They're actually all the same foods. Doesn't matter which way you measure them. So you really start to get into raw spinach and broccoli and sprouts and cabbage and celery. And of course, when we talk about fasting, I always recommend you fast on cucumber and celery because they're two of the most cleansing foods, as well as being high mineral content and high water content. Wonderful. So a really nice mixture of foods there. So you'll get that on that same chart as well. So stick it up on the fridge. This is a great quote, which I'll read out about anger. By identifying external things like the amount of traffic on the roads tonight and the pace of life and labeling them as causes of rage, it perpetrates the idea that we're not responsible for our anger. Were World War II and the Depression any less stressful than now? No, of course they weren't. Anger is a self-indulgence. We are not born with the anger response, we learn it. The interesting thing is once you become angry, if you say, right, I'm going to stay angry for 5 minutes, the anger dissipates almost immediately. It's almost impossible to stay angry if your shoulder and stomach muscles relax. With anger, the body is prepared to fight and is pumped full of stress chemicals. The thymus gland begins to shrivel up. You begin to get internal organ ulceration. You create internal acidity and you begin to age that much faster. It's a really nice quote on the effect that negative emotions have. And of course, I'm going to present a couple of slides now, and every single line on these slides is from a scientific study. So none of this stuff is made up. This is actually all based in measuring the human body and the effect that emotions have on us. For a start, being happy is not genetic, as 75% of optimism is learnt. Positive people are far less likely to fall ill. We know that as well from the studies on the immune system and irritable bowel syndrome as well. Feeling good and happy and laughing can help lengthen your life enormously. One of those things that the centenarians, when you study the centenarians, you'll find they laugh all day long, like children. And it really is, it extends that youthful longevity. Laughing boosts your immune system, improves your blood vessels, has huge impacts on you. Optimism also helps reduce cancer pain and fatigue. And optimists are 30% less likely to die from heart disease. Happily married couples also have much, much lower blood pressure, apart from certain times, of course. Happiness and friendship as well. Loving couples who touch and cuddle and things like that also have far less cortisol, stress hormones in their body, and they age much slower. So that whole youthful kind of love buzz thing you get into. And the more positive that you feel about how you age, the more likely you are to make much, much better, healthier lifestyle choices. So there's kind of some logic there as well. The more likely you are to live about 7 years longer. Also, people who have a strong network of good friends live longer. There was a study, another one that came out this morning, showing that those who are depressed are much, much higher likelihood of living alone in terms of becoming depressed, and that whole social fabric starting to fall apart in modern society and the rise of depression around the world. And also when you look at the centenarians, which is the polar opposite, the centenarians and those groups around the world that have these incredible longevity rates, they are a key part of their community. You know, and they're revered and looked upon. You know, we bring them in and we hang on to them and we give them a place, we give them something to do and they feel valued and looked after. So really important to look after our families as they grow older. And it gives us longevity as well. So women who take a negative view on life are more likely to develop heart trouble, and this is why I call it a mad, sick heart. And angry people have literally thicker arterial walls and significantly increase the risk of stroke, cardiovascular disease, heart attack. So again, that whole, I'm so angry, I'm going to have a heart attack, that kind of, you know, you can literally clench the muscles, and that's exactly what happens with the body when you do that. And when you get that constriction happening, of course, the blood doesn't flow, you have a heart attack. Angry people have more calcium deposits in their arteries, a higher blood pressure, a raised heart rate, and bad-tempered people are 3 times more likely to die of a heart attack. Just literally bang, drop dead, because of the build-up of acidity over time. So again, starting to learn, and it's that whole thing of stress management, lowering the stress, starting to learn how to breathe deeply, sustain negative emotions. Hostility creates higher heart disease, lower levels of antioxidants. Extended emotional stress ages your skin and your body much faster. Negative people will get high levels of IBS. Again, it's one of the reasons why IBS is so high in England. There's a much, much higher level. It's actually true. This is where the study comes from. Is the English, of course, are renowned for a negative attitude, more of a depressed kind of feeling. And they have much higher levels of IBS, and this study was done in the UK. Happiness is contagious. So again, spread the love. Talk to people well, be kind to your neighbours, and your emotions are literally transmitted like a virus. You can actually get one positive person and put them in a crowd, and you can literally then start to watch people start to smile. You can measure the smiling on faces start to ripple out. So again, you know, being involved in the community, it seems to be one of those things that is, one of those things I don't talk about a lot because this is more about diet and lifestyle, but it's one of those things that has such an impact on your health, your emotional state. And of course that ties in with your guts and your prebiotics, which we talked about in the other seminar. So food combining, it's one of those things as well that is very important when it comes to acid alkaline. Dr. Hay, who we talked about from 1933, suggested not eating the same foods together at the same time. This is called food combining. I also call it intelligent eating. And it can be miraculous for people. I've had amazing results with people where they've actually started following this. In food layering, which is another very scientific term, which no doubt will become gospel over time, which is a Jason term. But it's different as it's based on the time that foods take to break down. So actually, when you actually look at food layering and food combining, you find they work together really, really well. Cheese can take a week, if at all, to break down, and fruit can be digested in 20 minutes. So the different food times, like if you can imagine if you eat a whole pile of cheese and it's going to sit in there for 24 hours breaking down in your gut, then you put fruit on top that gets broken down quickly, and the acids that are pumped in for the fruit are completely different than the acids that are working on the cheese. You start to get stomachache. So that's how it works in the stomach. So food combining and food layering. The basic rules are very simple. Eat the most watery, least dense foods first, such as leafy salads or fruits. So if you've got any kind of fruits, eat that first, half an hour before you eat. Leafy salads, if you've got a big plate of salad and things, eat all the salad first because it gets broken down and goes through very quickly. Eat the most concentrated or dense foods last. So those very heavy starches, very heavy meats or cheeses, eat them last. Leafy green blossoms, of course, combine with everything. Now, when I say everything, I don't mean all at once. Right? What I mean here is leafy green blossoms combine very well with fruit. Leafy green blossoms combine very well with vegetables. Leafy green blossoms combine very well with carbohydrates and very well with proteins, not with all of them at the same time. So they combine with them individually very, very well. And leafy green blossoms are pretty much the only food group that combines with everything. So it doesn't matter what you're eating, you can actually combine leafy green blossoms with all your other foods. Fresh fruits generally are digested very quickly, and they're designed to be eaten as a snack, and they go through your digestion very, very fast. So generally 30 minutes before a main meal or 2 hours afterwards. So, basic food combining rules. Proteins. Heavy proteins combine well with salads or leafy green blossoms, leafy green vegetables. And nuts and seeds combine well with vegetables and acidic fruits, things like lemons. It's why you can actually squeeze lemon juice onto a nice salad, or lemon juice combines very well with meat as well. And traditionally you'll have, when you look at cultures that do eat meat, they'll have high levels of spices and gingers, lemon juice and things like that to help you break down the meat. So it's a natural part of eating that meat is to have all those spices and things that help you break it down, like lemons and limes. Avoid mixing two proteins, and you'll find that traditional foods don't do this. You actually don't get a lot of combining of heavy protein meals together. You'll get a meal that's based around one protein source alone. Avoid mixing your fruit and your starchy vegetables. So, for instance, apples and carrots don't combine well. This is something I try to talk to a lot about people when they're juicing. I do not recommend combining your fruits and vegetables when you juice. Right, the only two that can combine is the leafy green blossoms, as Mason asked about. So your leafy greens above the ground, like spinach and silver beet, kale, they combine well with fruits. But your broccolis and cabbages and your starchy things like potatoes and carrots and beetroot, things like that don't combine well. So they don't combine. So the key thing to remember is leafy greens go well with fruit. That's whether you're smoothieing or whether you're juicing. However, I also don't recommend fruits when you're juicing so much because it should be more about vegetables.
What about lemon juice with your beetroot and your...
Yeah, lemon juice is fine. Lemon juice is one of those rare things that's very, very fine. Yeah, combines well with just about everything. So lemons and limes here combine with protein, with salads, all kinds of things. So lemons are one of those rare examples. Exceptions. Some carbohydrates combine very, very well together. Things like rice and soybeans combine well. Beans on toast, that kind of thing. You know, there's a lot of traditional meals based around different carbohydrates that combine to give you a good protein source, but they're basically high carbohydrates. And remember, tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers are fruits. Remember that. Often we get confused and we forget that they're actually fruits. So remember, they're part of the fruit family. So your tummy is not a concrete mixer. This is another slide I've done, which will be coming in the next week or two, to remind you that your stomach is not designed to just throw everything in, she'll be right, and it'll mix it all up. No. An example is fresh orange juice takes about 15 minutes to digest. So when we talk about fresh, we're talking about some of the questions about fresh juice. Freshly made juice, very, very quick. But bread needs about 4 hours. So what happens is if you eat them together, you get this combination where the orange acidity slows down the starch digesting enzyme, phytolane, which completely alters what happens, and it creates alcohol in the stomach. So you start to get booze happening and indigestion happening and gas happening in your stomach, and you start to wonder why you get up in the morning and you rush around, you have some freshly made orange juice and some starchy bread, and you have some butter and marmite on it, you jump in your car and you rush off to work, and you wonder why mid-morning you're going to go, well, that's that kind of fermentation starting to fight with the different acids are fighting. Whereas if you just had a bowl of fruit based around the oranges that you had, you wouldn't have that. Or if you just had the piece of bread, you wouldn't have it. But if you just had the piece of bread, you'd probably be constipated, so that's a different thing. But you would if you combine the two of them, that's where you start to get the problems happening. So again, don't treat your tummy like a concrete mixer. Food layering, which is one of those distinctions which I've looked at over a long period of time, is when you start to look at how quickly foods are digested, you start to realize how you can break it down and easily make it better for your stomach. Fruits and vegetable juices, you can have 15 minutes before you eat because it's literally gone through. It's like water. Fresh fruits are about 30 minutes. A raw tossed salad takes about 40 minutes to break down. Cooked vegetables and eggs and fish, about 45 minutes. So you notice you can have this with any one of these kind of things. But in terms of order of how long it takes things to break down, it usually goes like this. Now, nuts and seeds will break down faster when they're soaked, obviously, because if anything's dry, it then has to have the water broken into it. It has to become liquid before it's broken down. So nuts and seeds about 2 hours. Chicken or turkey about 3 hours. Red meat about 4 hours. Hard yellow cheese, 5 to 6 hours, if at all. So you get a kind of a different process there when you're eating food. So you can see that if you start to combine a whole lot of yellow cheese and then you eat some fresh fruit straight after that, then you have some legumes and then you have some raw tossed salad, you can start to see why after a big dinner party, you start to get a sore stomach. And notice tonight, I'm certainly feeling amazing after that food. It feels really good in my tummy. I'm not having any burping or anything at all. It's all very kind of similar mixture of foods, and then we had a little break before we had our pudding, then we have a little bit of pudding afterwards, so a nice mixture. So the acid alkaline basics. I know I've got a little over time, so I'm going to wrap it up over the next few slides, but here are the basic things to look for if you want to know what are the good things to do to make yourself more alkaline. More water, more fasting, more vegetables, more raw foods containing those digestive enzymes, more sprouts, more happiness and more happy emotions, more flexibility and relaxation. So, stretching in the morning if you can, or stretching after your exercise, having a bit of time out every day, even if it's reading a book. A very alkalining thing to do is sit outside in the backyard and read a book for half an hour in the quiet peace of the afternoon sun, that kind of thing. Going for a walk on the beach. Fruits and avocado and seeds and nuts are much more alkaline. Now this gets more acidic as we go. So some nuts will be more acidic and they kind of end up on that balance. So the line at the bottom of the page here is about bang on in the middle between alkaline and acid. Then the most acidic things there are is drugs and chemicals, things like alcohol and cigarettes. Cola and soft drinks, a pH of 2.5. White sugar and white bread is highly acidic. Overeating, which of course is the opposite of fasting. Stress as well. Sugary cereals, coffee, highly acidic. Red meats are acidic. Dairy products. And you get more into that area here where grains and beans and some dairy products are often more in the middle of the acid alkaline spectrum. So black tea with milk, black tea without milk is more alkaline. And I had a question asked about tea actually early on, wasn't it? It was the difference between black tea and green tea, same plant, different process. Black tea generally is a lot less harmful on the body when you have it black as opposed to with milk. The milk tends to suck the polyphenols, which are the good part, out and remove them. They bond together and you can't absorb them. So I recommend green tea, but it does take a while of getting used to the taste. So I'll put together 3 summary slides, and you'll also get all these 3 summary slides put together on one, and you'll get that over the next week or so in terms of what we're going to summarize up. So be aware of your acid alkaline food intake. Really important to be fully aware of actually what you're eating, and really have that chart that we've got, that I've done, which is going to come up after this. Have that chart up on your wall. Have it up on your fridge, and then you can actually see the full chart of all the different acid alkaline foods all in a row. It's really, really helpful. Keep your body tissue pH at 7, and you'll find it almost impossible to get sick, near impossible to get sick. 4 serves of alkaline to 1 serve acidic. So if you can have some acidic food, have a whole lot of alkaline food with it. It's why I say to people, look, if you're going to eat meat or fish or eggs or dairy products, have a whole lot of vegetables with it. It's the key thing that's missing. Don't just have a hamburger. Have a little bit of meat with lots of vegetables instead of the buns and all the rubbish that go with it. Start the day with a glass of warm water, and this is where this advice comes from. Very alkalining and stimulates the digestion. Aloe vera juice, lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, warm water. It doesn't have to be this exact mix. You can make up any kind of mix you like. Just that these things all tend to stimulate the digestion and get the process going. So any mixture of this kind of food is good. You can have just lemon juice or just warm water if you like. But do not start the day on a coffee. Start the day on some kind of water mix of some sort. It doesn't have to be warm either. It can be cold if you like. So it's just that basic high water intake. And remove the high stress situations from your life, or at least learn to see them differently. Like Chase and I were in the car today as a classic example. We're stuck in this traffic jam. It was taking an hour and a half for a 20-minute drive. We'd specifically put aside the time, got the babysitter in early so we could be here in time, so we could set up this great evening. And all our time was sucked, even worse than normal. We were running far more late than we ever did. Now, we could have got really uptight, but we decided, can't do anything about it. We'll just try to get there, and started talking about business and got on with other things. So, try to see a situation if you can't influence it differently. Makes a huge difference. You literally start to feel yourself calming down. Eat more fruits, vegetables, sprouted, fermented foods, nuts and seeds. Really good thing to do. Drink more water when thirsty, and start to train yourself into drinking more water. Often if you're hungry, if you have a glass of water, you'll find the hunger will go away. So often we're fooled into thinking that we're hungry. Drink less water while eating meals. And the only exception to this, of course, is making a green smoothie. We actually use a little bit of water to actually help blend it up. But apart from that, because, of course, fruits are so high water, vegetables, leafy green blossoms are so high water, 96% water, you've essentially got water and water all blending together with a little bit of polyphenols and things in there and fibre. Eat more onions, more black pepper. Try to get a lot more spices and herbs into your food. It's one of the reasons the Indian diet is so good. Spicing and herbing things up. A wonderful, wonderful array of things like curcumin and turmeric will literally thin the blood. Black pepper, incredibly good for the sinus. Horseradish will literally blast your sinuses away, keep you from getting sick. There's an amazing array of herbal foods that we should be adding. Parsley as well, incredible source of iron, highly alkalizing, very good for the kidneys. So add more spices and herbs and things to your foods, make it more alkaline. A drug is no substitute for a friend. I read this as a quote once, and I thought it was one of the best things I'd ever read, because you cannot drug yourself well without getting some good friends in your life. So your friends are gold. So avoid drugs and instead build more friends. Take time out each day to try to relax and de-stress, even if it's a few minutes every day, like reading a book. Ideally, obviously, it's meditation, just sitting really quietly and breathing and just allowing the brain to download a little bit, because most of the time we're so busy going that we literally burn ourselves away. Eat more organically grown, tree-ripened fruit. And how do you do this? You go out to the markets, or you find someone who's got a tree. And of course, I go on about grapefruit every year. A lot of us go on grapefruit hunting expeditions around the neighbourhood. We get to know who's got the grapefruit trees, and we go and ask them, and you go and pick them when they're in season. And I just love that. I literally pick it, and I almost eat it on the spot, because it's just the primo delivery of one of the best foods in the world. Walk outside in nature every day for at least 30 minutes to try to get outdoor exercise. I know we're going into winter now, it's a lot harder to get that, but even things like lymphosizing, rebounding, bouncing on a little rebounder inside is a wonderful way to get exercise. But try to get outside in nature. There's nothing more alkaline than being outside in the bush or near the sea. Eat less animal protein, less takeaways, pretty obvious advice. The more processed the food is, the more acidic. And it's the key thing to remember. So you start off with an apple, comes straight off the tree, highly alkalining, living nutrition, both sorts of fibre, all the polyphenols, all the living nutrition is right there. Now, the more that you process that, you take the peel off, you store it for ages, you chop it up into bits, you then take the fibre out, you then make it refined, and you turn it into fruit juice, and then you turn that into sugar, then you turn that into powder, and then the powder gets shipped to another country, and then it gets added to water and sugar over here, and that's what they call fruit juice over in Venezuela, when it was grown somewhere else in the Pacific. Here, highly acidic, over here, highly alkalining, but it's the same food. So remember, the more that you remove it from its natural environment, the more acidic it gets. So the more natural foods you can get in you, the better. Leafy green vegetables are just the fastest way to get alkaline there is. Learn to breathe properly as well. Most of us are under-oxygenated in that sense. Use the lower lungs, and this is where the blood flow occurs. So when this area is adequately ventilated, we become under-oxygenated. So try to get more deep breathing happening, and you do that when you're exercising, so that's important. Always eat alkaline foods if you're eating acidic foods. This is a simple little trick. So if you're going out somewhere and you're about to buy a treat, always make sure you look at it, because you'll start to get used to it when you've got the chart up on your fridge. You'll start to get used to what are the alkalining foods. And generally, they're the foods you crave when you're unwell. When you get sick, you go, God, I wanted some soup, or all I want is a salad. That's when you know what the alkaline foods are, because the body will literally crave it when you're unwell. So when you're out, instead of just buying an acidic food, go, you know what? I might get an acidic food, but I might also get some vegetables with it, or something alkaline with it as well. Maybe get a tank juice. You go to a juice bar and you get a juice to go with your hamburger, or whatever, vegetable juice. And they'll actually make vegetable juices for you at those tank bars if you ask them nice enough. Learn to be positive. So learn to see things in a positive way. That's pretty obvious. Stretch each day for about 10 minutes. So try to get a bit more flexibility into the body. The more acidic we get, the more constricted we tend to get. And as you'll find as we get older, we tend to get like that. So you find the races that are more alkaline tend to be standing up a lot of the time. They're more flexible, they're more able to move. So try to get more movement and stretching into the body. And base your diet and your daily exercise and lifestyle actions around alkalizing the human body. So if you can start to see those things, you'll find that they are also very much in tune with more prebiotics, more raw foods, more fermented, less overeating, more exercise, more sleep, more sunlight, more relaxation, less stress, less toxins, more organics, all those things that we know to do. But the acid alkaline is a great way to measure it because it actually is a good scientific way of doing it. So I think that's the end of the seminar tonight.